Today I'm interviewing Kevin Whitt. Kevin was a drag queen and former transgender and has come out of that lifestyle and is now seemingly doing really well. So Kevin, I just wanted to get your story because it's another one of those stories about people who had this transgender identity and were able to resolve it.
Yeah, so whenever I was about 15, I came out of the closet. I told my parents I was bisexual. And then soon after that, I was really never bisexual though. However, I did have gender dysphoria. And so I did feel that I should be a woman. Um, but I knew if I told my parents that and I was not attracted to the same sex, it would be kind of weird to be like a straight person and also wanting to dress as a female. So I told my mom I was bisexual, then shortly after gay, and then shortly after transsexual. And my mother was very okay with it. My father was not okay with it. Um, and then but mind you, my childhood growing up was extremely dysfunctional. Um, I was verbally abused, physically abused, and sexually abused by my father.
Mm.
And so I think that probably played into it, because I always saw men as being the evil one, I guess you would say, like they were bad. And my mom as being like the hero, because she was always there to protect us.
Well, that makes total sense that you would identify with being a female if your primary male role model was abusive in so many ways.
Yes. And so I did present as female. My mom was very okay with it. I started going to high school whenever it was like the junior year of high school, which was my last year of high school, because I was really, really, really bullied in school. And so I really tried to skip school as much as possible and not be there. And so my last year, the year I dropped out, which I was a junior, I went to school most of the time as a girl. Um, and really, in the era I was growing up in, if you were gay or transgender or anything, you fit into this punk rock gothic category of people. So I was a gothic guy, I guess. So I wore like long velvet skirts, Doc Martens, and fishnet shirts, and had long black hair. And so that was still okay, kind of, because I think that other peers just saw it as my fashion.
It's so interesting that you say that because I suspect we're close in age. I'm not sure. I might be a little bit older, but I was able to dress in, black pants, army boots, and an army jacket. And even though today that would be considered gender nonconforming, back then it was sort of goth or, sort of
Yeah.
just the alt crowd. Nobody really raised an eyebrow at it. And we had lots of
No.
people dressing, and I mean, Rocky Horror Picture Show had come out, and so we had people sort of emulating the characters in that show.
Yeah. Like and in my high school, I went to a very large high school. We had 5,000 students. But just like they have every group, like the jocks and the preps or whatever they call them nowadays, I don't even know. Well, we were the freaks. That's what they called us. And so they just looked at us as like, oh, they're the freaks over there. And we all hung out together. So it was just like another little um subcategory of high school students. And so it wasn't really that strange, except for the fact, now at this school, prior to that, like in junior high and things like that, I was very bullied because I didn't have a place that I fit in. But whenever I got to high school, I did. There
Now, was
was
the
more,
bullying
much,
primarily because you were more feminine?
yes. I started because I was I was a very feminine person and kid. So whenever I was in, I guess, kindergarten, the first grade is when they first started calling me a faggot, you
Oh,
know, and that word just really stuck throughout all of my years of going to school. And, and they would throw fruit at me from the cafeteria. They would like trip me, all kind of things. So it was just always it was like going to school for me was like a living hell. Did not want to be there. And
I'm so
so,
sorry. It just makes me,
um,
it just is so, it makes me so sad to hear stories like that. That, I mean, because those have such a profound impact. It's hard to recover from years and years of being picked on like that.
I mean, it really does because that with also what was going on at home. Um, I mean,
Mhm. You didn't
I
have
have some
anywhere that you were
I
safe.
have some PTSD issues
Mhm.
because, you know, I mean, it is traumatic for a child to experience that at home and at school. And so, but yeah, so I came out and began living as a girl, began doing drag shows like probably at 18, just as soon as I could. And because that was an outlet for my femininity. And then I began living as a girl just because really, well, because doing drag was an outlet for my femininity, but also, so that was like a way that I got to express myself doing drag, but I really wanted to live that way. So I started to. And I lived that way off and on because in that time we did not have all of these pronouns that they have now. So we did not have they them. We definitely did not have um, non-binary and all that. But now that I think back about my life, I probably would have identified as more. I would have identified as a transsexual in the beginning, but toward the end of that life as a transsexual, I would have identified as non-binary because I came to a place where, well, I started doing drag shows. I ended up being a prostitute. I prostituted for many years, 17 years, um, off and on. And I also lived as a woman off and on because there were times in my life where I was like, I don't want to put on makeup today. I don't want to put on girl clothes today. I want to just be able to put on like blue jeans and a t-shirt and go. And so, but in my mind, that was not being a woman. That was being more dressing more manly. Because in my mind, being a woman, I was the type of a transsexual that dolled up every day, like probably over over femininize myself.
And when you were prostituting, were you primarily presenting as in drag or as a
Oh,
woman?
I always did. Mhm. Yeah, of course, yes. I definitely would not have ever felt comfortable doing that as a guy. And so I did work in all aspects of adult industry. I was a phone sex operator. I was a webcam girl. I was I did porn photo shoots, and I also danced nude, one-on-one, up close and personal in a modeling studio. That's what they called it. It really wasn't a modeling studio. Um, and I also saw clients like in call and out call. So, yep, I was very, very in the life.
Now, if you
Um,
were anything like me, I did cam, I don't know if I'd call it cam girl stuff exactly, but I made porn and took requests, and I'm not sure if you had the same experience, but I was like, at the time I was doing it, the requests didn't seem that unusual. But when I look back on it, I just realized how completely like dangerous, harmful, icky, like the requests were. Did you have that experience as well? just like some
I mean,
deep,
yeah.
deep ickiness.
See, here's the deal, and this is what people don't understand. A lot of women, a lot of heterosexual people don't understand this, but the majority of my clients were married straight men, and they were married with children and wives, and you know, they were the normal type of a person that you would never in a million years suspect that they were into transgender people, but they were. And so the thing was, they always we're going. I can get real. They always were the ones that were wanting to see like my penis and things like that, and they were wanting to see me ejaculate. You know, you can only do that.
Interesting.
You can only do that so many times a day.
That is
So I
interesting,
had to start
though.
thinking of ways to fake it and make it look real.
It's a
And
lot
like,
easier for
because
a woman to
I need
fake the
money.
squirt.
Yeah, like how am I gonna make this work? Because I really need money today. And so, and I figured out a way, and I did. You know, um, shampoo.
That is
Some
really,
shampoos look real.
yeah, that's fascinating though, that there's that whole element. So these are basically gay men who are in heterosexual marriages, I guess.
Well, they would always, a lot of these men were very confused about their sexuality. And so they would ask me, does me being with you make me gay? And my answer was, because, you know, I always wanted them to come back to see me and things like that. I would say, do you consider me to be a man or a woman? And they would say, oh, I consider you to be a woman. And I would say, okay, you're straight. Because
That's what they wanted to hear.
yes, that's what they wanted to hear. And so and so I also had a way of, I knew how to play the game, because that's what it is, you know, and it's really, yeah, that. But yes, these men, they are into some perverted things. Yeah. And I'm not gonna mention those because I don't want to scare anybody.
Yeah, but it is,
Just
I
use your
think,
imagination.
well, and I think you actually, I don't even know if that helps, because I was really naive when I started making porn. I had no clue how deviant and strange and really dangerous it could get, until, you know, I got into it and it just kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper. So if somebody had told me before I was involved in the industry to use my imagination, I might have thought of like 69 or something.
Oh yeah.
And then you get in and it's like, you know, it is uh, you can't imagine it until you get in there, and
No.
that is learning, thinking about the level of perversion going on and how it's being normalized now because porn is so accessible.
Yes. And see, a lot of what I did whenever I worked in the adult industry was I did a lot of domination, and I was a dominatrix. And so
Yeah, wasn't
that was
your name Dominique?
Dominique. Uh-huh. There was a reason for that. Um yeah, and so that's what I did, and that's what I mean, and I did domination because this is the thing. I felt like if I'm going to be in the sex industry, I'm going to have full control over everything I do. I'm not going to be the submissive where the client has control over me.
That was a very good choice.
Yeah, because that way, if the client has control over me, they can make me do anything. But if I have control, I'm the one that determines what I do. And I think that's why I came out of the sex industry after 17 years HIV negative. And
Oh,
it's because
interesting.
I was always very cautious,
That
even to
is
the fact,
so,
even down to the, like, I would say, okay, this hand is for you to touch yourself with. This hand is for me, you to touch me with. You cannot use this hand to touch me. Like, because, because
and you could
I
do
was
that
kind of
because of your
germaphobe.
role. Oh, that's so interesting, because I actually, HIV was what propelled me to get out of prostitution because I was prostituting in high school. And it suddenly occurred to me that this could kill me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, it's probably good. Well, I'm not someone who could pull off dominatrix very well. So that probably wasn't something that I ever imagined doing, but that was really a good coping mechanism that you had to keep yourself safe.
Yes. And it definitely worked for me. And I do think that that's how I remember whenever I went to go get tested for HIV after that whole lifestyle, I had to work up my courage, and I was like, okay, you are probably going to be positive. I mean, I really thought that I would be positive. And I went to go get tested, me and my mom. And I remember I was standing outside of that clinic. I was smoking cigarette after cigarette. I must have smoked a whole pack of cigarettes waiting on those results. And they called me back in there and they said, "You're negative." And I said, "What?"
Sure.
And they said, "Yeah." I said, "We're going to have to do this again because I'm not sure if I trust that test." They said, "I promise you, you're negative." Then, because that was just the quick test. So I said, "Well, can y'all send that blood off to go for the Western blot, which is the one that takes like 2 or 3 weeks to come back, because that's really the surefire test result." And they said, "Yeah," and they sent it off, and it was still negative. And I was like, "God, thank God." And then I've been tested so many times since then, and always negative. And it was only by the grace of God and my God-given intelligence to know to be a dominatrix if I was going to be in that industry.
Yeah, because
So
that is incredibly that was smart on your part. I mean, it never would have even occurred to me, and so that was really a good way to protect yourself. And so you said you were doing this for 18 years,
yes,
and during
17,
17
yeah.
or 18 years. So during that time, I'm assuming most of the time you were presenting as trans, either
Yes.
whatever you want to call it, transsexual, transgender. And so what was it that kind of pulled you out of it and made you sort of identify differently?
Well, yeah. And well, like I was saying, in that time, like toward the end, in the beginning I loved it. And I loved prostituting and I loved doing drag shows because I loved the attention. Because nobody had done anything my whole life but bully me and make me feel less than.
See,
So of
that's
course,
okay. That's interesting because I actually have noticed, sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah, yeah,
a lot of former trans people were involved either in prostitution, pornography, or both. And I always thought it was just me, but then when I started talking to other people, I'm like, no, this seems to be pretty common. And I wonder if it's because we had such negative experiences with ourselves and our bodies and our childhood, and then you go into prostitution or sex work and suddenly people appreciate you. And even though it's a fake appreciation and a very
yeah,
superficial, it's more than I ever got when I was growing up.
yes. Well, here's the deal. Most people that are gay or trans, they have they have a issue with the fact that they've never felt, nobody's ever made their life feel validated. They've never felt desired and wanted and loved. And for whatever reason, they feel that way. And so whenever they, number one, whenever they start getting into the gay lifestyle, it's very promiscuous. So they get in this lifestyle and they start getting all this attention. I mean, a lot of attention. And then they start feeling, oh my God, like people want me. And then they can hook up with a dude any given night. And so they're feeling like validated then. And it's the same way with trans. Like a lot of these, you know what? I mean, a lot of people are not going to appreciate me saying this, but a lot of time these trans people are really not trans. They really don't feel mentally like a woman. A lot of times they and it's really sad to say, but a lot of times they feel inadequate as a man or unattractive as a man, but they feel way more attractive as a female. So they have found, they're like, okay, I'm ugly as a dude, but I can be beautiful as a woman. So I'm
Right.
just going to be a woman. But then, but it's not, has nothing to do with who they are mentally. It has everything to do with who will attract the most attention, because we all have a desire to be loved and wanted. And a lot of these people have not been loved and wanted
Yeah.
by anybody. And so they start into this lifestyle where they will be loved and wanted. And even though when you're turning a trick and you're seeing somebody for just an hour or maybe 30 minutes, because clients leave as soon as they get off. So like whenever, however long you're going to see them for, you're feeling validated, wanted, and desired for that time. And then if you are prostituting, you are thinking in your head, hey, I'm really pretty. I'm really hot. This dude just paid me. This man has done paid me money to see me. So now, and that mean what that really means is that they are a pervert and they will probably stick their penis in any hole they can find. But for the prostitute, it makes them feel wanted, special, and validated for that time being. And so therefore, yes, it's addictive, because it's addictive. Not only the money is addictive, but also that feeling that you get every time you see a client.
Well, and it's almost
Every,
like you're doing a public service. You're like a
yeah,
counselor or a therapist. You're doing something. Like in my mind, I had gotten to the point where I thought, I'm like important because I'm doing this service that these people need, and that they're not able to get otherwise. And I had
yes.
incredible compassion for the people that I was servicing, which is it's confusing now when I look back on it. But in my mind at the time, I remember thinking, this is a serious job, and I can understand where people who are doing that want to legitimize sex work, because it's easy to get into that mindset. But I don't know, how do you feel now when you look back on it? Do you have a sense of like, oh, how did I get so far off course?
Okay, nowadays I feel like, so the way I got out of all that work, just out of that lifestyle, was it was God, but I was not looking for God. And I definitely at the time felt like I loved my life and I loved living in that lifestyle. So I was not wanting to get out of it because it's all I ever knew and it was fun for me and exciting. So, you know, but I'm also a hairstylist, and I've been a hairstylist off and on, well, for 15 years. And so, but it was more like, so I always, toward the end of prostitution, I was a hairstylist, but if I ever was broke or needed money, I would just throw an ad up. Because, once you've been a prostitute, it's nothing. So I used to always say a prostitute will never be broke because they can always put an
Yeah.
ad up, because they've already been there. They've already done that. And so I was working at this salon briefly because I was moving to Florida with a friend of mine. And this lady in the salon, me and her went out to go have drinks one night, like my farewell party. And she was like, I think whenever you move to Florida, you're gonna come encounter with some Christian people and stuff, and your life is gonna change, and
Oh, wow.
you're gonna find God or whatever. And I was like, this woman's crazy. Like, I ain't looking for God. But I was just out with her, like, because I was having drinks. Now I think back, I don't even know if she was drinking, but I was sure drinking. And so we went to Florida. We moved to Florida, and I got a job in a hair salon, but it was part time. And then I worked in a bar at nighttime as a drag queen in this gay male strip club. And I was the dance manager, and I would tell everybody what stages to rotate to And then I also performed twice throughout the night. And one night, this little dude, he was a stripper. And I was at the bar getting a drink, and he said, "Hey, Dominique, do you want to go to church with me tomorrow?" And I was like, "Sure." Like, this is definitely drunk talk. You're wearing a thong, and you've been stripping all night, and I'm over here in a high horse drag, drunk as I don't know what. So sure. And he was like, "Okay." So the next morning, this boy shows up to my house to pick me up. And he was honking the horn, and I looked outside, and lo and behold, he was out there. And I was like, "Oh my God, I guess I'm going to church." And so I just like, I didn't even have time to take a shower or nothing. I went and brushed my teeth, put on my clothes from the night before, and we went to this huge mega church. And it was like a very weird experience because I felt so out of place. But he was like, had his hands up and worshiping the Lord. And I'm like, "What are you doing? You were just stripping last night." So we had a conversation on the way home, and he explained to me that, he was trying to leave the homosexual lifestyle and all that. And so it planted a seed in me. It made me start questioning things and thinking about things. But, I was still partying and stuff. I mean, I didn't like even go to church right after that or anything. But a few months later, I ended up moving back to Texas from Florida. And one of my old hair clients was like, "Hey, do you want to go to church with me on Easter?" And I was like, everybody goes to church on Easter. And this girl had been bugging me to go to church with her. I was like, "Sure, I'll go to church with her." And they were doing this modern day rendition of the resurrection of Christ. And I was like, so it was like hip hop, rap, and all this. And so I was really paying attention to it. And I was like, "Oh my God, Jesus did all this for me. And I've been nothing but a heathen and literally a whore my entire life. And if Jesus did that for me, he loves me. He loves me more than any of these clients that ever gave me money, you know? And so it really just like, it just like spoke to me that day. And I started crying. And, they said, and they did the typical, if you want to accept Christ, raise your hand, whatever. But they brought me a Bible after I accepted Christ. And I really thought, okay, I'm going to be like a gay Christian or a trans Christian or whatever, At this point, I was not living as a girl anymore. I was living as a girl when I needed to. I was dressing as a girl when I needed to, but I was living very androgynous because I was over it. I was over the getting dressed up and all. Like, and I would probably nowadays, I have identified as non-binary. Like, I didn't feel like male or female. And so it was like, I would dress as a female on the days I felt female. And so they were doing this. So I got a Bible and I went home and I started reading this Bible. But I did not think at this time, I was like, I'm going to be a gay Christian. I'm going to continue this lifestyle because I don't know this is all I know. I came out of the closet at 15. So, but I started reading the Bible and I started reading the scriptures about homosexuality. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, it's really clear right here that homosexuality is a sin. So if I'm going to follow Jesus, I'm not going to be a lukewarm Christian. I mean, I'm going to really follow Jesus. And so I started praying and I started crying and I said, "God," because to me, I could have never fathomed the idea of leaving homosexuality or dressing as a girl or any of that. I could never fathom never doing that. And so I just started praying and I said, "God, if this is not what you want for my life, and if homosexuality is a sin, and you want me to live my life for you, however you want me to live it, then you are going to have to be the one that takes away these desires because I sure can't." You're going to have to be the one that takes away my desire for men, my desires to be a woman and everything. And so now, mind you, I was a nymphomaniac, like nympho. So, but the course of like 2 weeks, I noticed, oh wow, I haven't had sex in 2 weeks, and then like 3 weeks, and then I was like, I haven't even looked at a man, because before, every man I looked at, literally, I was a pervert. Every man I looked at, I thought, I wonder how big his penis is. That was the only thing I thought. I really did. I was like, does he have a big penis? Does he have a big penis? Every person, I'm like, it was really like, it was crazy. And so, but I wasn't doing that anymore. And I just saw men as like normal people. So then I found online this group for ex-homosexuals, and I went there. I was like, I want to go hear what they have to say. And so they did an intake interview, and they were like, they interview you and ask you like what you hope to achieve or whatever. And I said, and they were like, they said, are you wanting to live your life? Are you wanting to turn straight or live your life as a straight person? I said, if you think that you're going to make me straight, I am not going to come, because that's not what I'm here for. And they said, that's not what we're trying to do. We want to love you into a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I said, okay, I can deal with that. And so I started going to these meetings once a week. And it was like, oh my God. It was like they explained everything about my life at these meetings, everything I had ever gone through, everything that, like, why I was attracted to men, why I was dressing as a girl. They broke it down psychologically and scientifically and biblically. And I was like, oh my God, this is what's wrong with me. So I'm really not gay. I'm really, the real thing was I was broken and I was neglected and I was emotionally neglected and abused. And this is the manifestation of that. And so then I started learning how to heal, and I started learning my identity in Jesus Christ. And I started learning that just because I'm feminine, and I've always been feminine, femininity does not equate homosexuality
Or transgender.
or transgender.
And that is something
Because
that I just want to like shout out, because
yes,
I wanted to talk to you about this clip that I saw where you were at a demonstration in support of Jeff Younger's son, who is being
yes,
transitioned by his mother. And somebody came out and accused you kind of being gay because you were effeminate. And I just thought, I've had it. I have had it
yeah,
with people labeling effeminate boys as transgender and butchy girls as transgender, because these are traits that we need to embrace and say, you know, I enjoy being around effeminate men. I enjoy being around butchy women. I enjoy being around masculine men and feminine women.
yeah,
And why are we trying to pigeonhole these people and especially tell little children that they're transgender if they happen to have these characteristics?
exactly. And it's sick, is what it is. It's really sick, and it's really child abuse.
It is.
Because those words that people say, it penetrates in that child's heart because they're already feeling inadequate. And then whenever you go and you say stuff like that, it makes them feel like they are the freak of nature. Like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? But that woman that day, because I was out there in front of Anne's clinic, Anne is transitioning her son to being a little
Her little
girl.
son. I mean, he's 8 years
Yeah,
old, isn't
he's
he?
8 years
He's
old
eight
now.
years old. And the
She
only
started
time he wears
transitioning
dresses
him
is
at
when his mom
3.
makes him do it.
Yes, she started transitioning him at 3 years old because he wanted like a girl doll or something. And so she's like, oh, well, he must be a girl. No, idiot. He's just a little boy that's curious. And so she started making him dress as a girl, going by the name of Luna. And he went to school even when he was like, I guess like when he was 6 years old, as Luna. But this little boy does not want to be a little girl. And even if he did want to be a little girl,
He's
it don't
not.
mean it's okay.
Yeah, he's not. And what
Yeah,
does that do to tell little boys? And I don't even know if he's a particularly effeminate boy or not, but if you tell any boy who happens to have a little bit of, gender nonconformity, that they're actually born in the wrong body, that's just doing untold damage. I mean, that's even worse than what you and I got as bullying. We got,
yeah,
I got called a faggot too. I got called all kinds of things. But nobody told me I was born in the wrong body. Thank goodness. And when I said that I wanted to be a boy, they didn't say, well, that's because you are a boy. I
yeah.
can't imagine what happens to these kids.
But here's the deal. That lady, there was a lady out there because I was protesting in front of her clinic, really, really with the idea that we need to let the people know that we need to let people know what's people. A lot of people don't know or not aware that this type of child abuse happens, and I want to bring awareness. And so I was doing it in front of her clinic, and this lady, I don't know who she was, walked up and she started cussing me out. She started out with saying, "Well, where is your mask?" Like, okay, mask Nazi, I don't know. Um, and then she was like going off on me, and then I started explaining to her because she was like, "You don't even know Anne or the kids or anything." I said, "I do know that I lived my life as a transgender woman for many years. I do know that, and I can speak on this from that level." And she said, "Oh, oh, you lived. You seem to be pretty effeminate to me." And I'm like, "What does that mean?"
Like that's that like the very person who was defending transitioning this kid was
I know.
attacking you for being effeminate.
Yes.
Ah,
She was defending a trans person, but because I'm a trans person who was not agreeing with trans, she's gonna attack me and say, "Oh, well, you're really feminine." I don't. Oh well, okay. You don't have to tell me what I don't know.
well, and I'm
I
just
know I'm
curious
feminine.
if you've had that experience a lot, because I've either been told that I was never really transgender or that I've internalized transphobia and that I'm actually, a man trapped in a woman's body. And that the reason that I'm speaking out about all this is because I have internalized transphobia. So those are the two things I hear on a regular basis. What kinds of things do you hear to dismiss your story?
Well, oh my God, just go to LGBTQ Nation, Google my name, type my name in. But okay, so let's see. They say that I'm still trans, um, or I'm still gay. I I'm lying to myself. All this, I'm like, okay, so you know me. You've met me before. You don't even know who I am. So how are you gonna tell me what I am?
Well, and the
Because
ironic thing is that they all want to like have their authentic self honored, and yet they won't honor
yeah,
anyone who has a different story.
no. And I, in fact, I'm in the process of undergoing testing for Klinefelter syndrome.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
don't know, do you know what
Uh-huh.
Klinefelter's is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
is that
And so,
extra X, XXY?
XXY. And so, and it's a form of being intersexed or
Right.
hermaphrodite. But, I have a friend that is intersex that has Klinefelter's who identifies as a woman. And this friend that identifies as a woman that's Klinefelter's will sit up here and tell you that being trans is not okay.
Really? Oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting. Huh.
it's she's very interesting. But for her, she says, I identify this way because I, it's in my chromosomes.
Right. So that's
But for
for people
most
who
people,
don't
it's
know
not even
about
in their
intersex.
chromosomes.
Yeah, and people who don't know about intersex, it's a developmental disorder. We have, Down syndrome is one of them where the chromosomes are off, and a lot of trans activists are using intersex in order to justify the idea that you can be born in the wrong body. But it's there, it's a false equivalency. There's no way you can
Yes.
say that because we have intersex people, somebody who is not intersex can be born in the wrong body.
Yeah, because intersex people, it is a defect, a birth defect.
Right, chromosomal
And
developmental disorder.
yeah. And in fact, my friend who has um XXY Klinefelters, she has chromosome issues running in her family. So she's got a Down syndrome in her family, and then someone else with another chromosome issue. So it runs in her family, these chromosome issues. And I mean, these are real issues. And so yes, and then like me, my voice never did change. When I was going through puberty, I grew breast tissue. I never had an Adam's apple. I was always kind of more hippie than most guys. Like grew
Well,
like
I'm so curious when you get the results. You'll have to let us know.
yes.
But
And
at the same
this
time,
is
there are guys that have higher voices and, breast tissue and hips. And I think that it's really important to embrace the fact that we can have, women who look more masculine and men who look more feminine. And that doesn't make them any less male or female.
no. And the only reason why I'm getting tested for this is because it's not going to change who I am. I'm getting tested because of health issues, because it can cause a lot of health issues later in life.
Right.
Like, because some people have internal ovaries that they need to get taken out that are like dead ovaries that can become cancerous and stuff like that. So I'm just doing it to be healthy, like to make sure that everything's okay. Um, but but yes, I do think that in the Western civilization, we have a major problem. And I have a desire. I really want to start speaking out against this and start somehow forming a platform to speak out against this, because in this country, we have a problem that if you don't watch football and you don't scratch your nuts, then you're not a man or you're gay. And watching football and scratching your balls does not make you gay. I mean, straight. It just makes you a rough and tumble man, and usually a pretty gross man. Like, you don't shower very often, and so, like, yeah. And where people are not, I don't believe, are born homosexual, they are born with a personality. And there are people that are born with sensitive personalities. And these men, for example, and I'm just speaking from the male perspective because I'm male, they often are the kind of guys that like to dance ballet, play the piano, like arts. I mean, they're great artists, very amazing fashion designers. All this stuff does not make you gay. Wonderful hairstylist does not make you gay.
Well, in your
So
case, I'm thinking about how the role model that you had was abusive, the male role model you had. And so it's not surprising to me that you even might have developed more effeminate qualities because you were close to your mom, because she was someone who you wanted to be like rather than
yeah,
like your dad. You didn't want to grow up and be abusive. So to me, it totally makes sense that you could have had sort of a predisposition to being a sensitive kid, but then you're probably going to just, I mean, I know that my kids have a lot of my mannerisms, and so
yeah,
that's what happens when you're around your loved ones, and if you're actively trying to say, I don't want to be like my dad, then it's not at all surprising that you developed more of these characteristics of your mom.
yeah, it's true. I definitely, my mom is my best friend. So yeah, of course. And I had two older sisters.
Oh,
But yeah, but I know a lot of really feminine boys that when you're a feminine boy, you automatically think you have no choice but to be gay or trans. Like, you don't think you
well,
have any
that's
other.
the narrative that they're getting. in schools
Yes.
now is that,
And this is why I want to speak out and be a voice to say that just because you wax your eyebrows and you take a shower and you go get a pedicure and a manicure does not make you gay.
and maybe you're a
It does
boy who
not.
likes getting flowers and that doesn't make you gay. And maybe you're a
No,
girl who likes rough and tumble. And so
exactly.
I think that
And
breaking down,
myself personally, if I have a wife, I want her to be kind of rough and tumble.
well, she needs to compliment you.
Yes, because I am the one that is the more feminine one, and like I don't have any qualms about saying I'm feminine. The Who has an issue with my femininity is other men. It's not me,
Well,
and other men in the church even. They don't know how to take me necessarily. But oh well, that's your problem, not mine.
so what are you doing now? Because it sounds to me like you have a pretty strong desire to challenge these things. And I know that you're out there supporting Jeff Younger and his fight to protect his son. Are you? And I know that I read somewhere that you have actually gotten backlash because you're speaking out
Oh,
about these issues, like we all are. So financially, are you doing okay? Because I know it seemed to me like you had lost some employment because you're standing up against this narrative.
well, so nowadays I started using my testimony to influence legislation, to influence legislators, to because we have all these bills like conversion therapy bans. Well, what people don't realize is that the conversion therapy that the LGBT activists are talking about does not exist.
Yeah.
And
It's
that
illegal to abuse people the way they talk about it. I mean, that's
yes,
illegal. It just
nobody
doesn't
does
happen.
that.
But what they're doing is getting rid of the therapy that helped me when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah. And so therefore, um, and it's an infringement upon my religious freedom. And so,
Well, and
and it's
also what I keep
discrimination.
thinking is that children who were abused and traumatized, like both of us were as children, who developed these identities because of that abuse, are being denied the opportunity to process our trauma now because of
Yeah.
these laws. And that makes me so angry.
Like I went to a gender therapist and I told the gender therapist that I had been abused and stuff. And my only treatment was to present as female.
And that's
She just ignored the whole fact
and
of
now a
the
lot of
abuse and all
therapists
that.
they are compelled to do that to affirm these kids,
Yeah.
which I think is criminal.
So the only therapy I've really received for all that has been through faith-based counseling. And so, um, and the other thing is that the conversion therapy or whatever you want to call it, no one is forced. First of all, they don't take anybody under the age of 18. So you have to be an adult and you cannot be forced to go there. If your parents force you to go there, they won't accept you. You don't get accepted to the program. And so, and it's like I said, I don't even know one program out there that is their goal is to turn you straight. It's not that. It's to love you into a relationship with Jesus Christ. If you come out of that still gay, oh well.
God
They're not
still
going to
loves
judge
you.
you.
Yeah, God still loves you.
Yes.
And so you said you were starting
And
to speak
so
out about these issues
so
publicly.
I started to speak out about that. And then you know, the the legislators, they like, especially the liberal ones, they like to put soji language, sexual orientation, gender identity in every bill. And so I speak out against that. And I started speaking out, and my goal is to um, get pediatric gender transition criminalized, because I don't care if you want to be a tranny when you are 18, 19, 20, 21, fine. But as a minor, you cannot buy cigarettes, you cannot buy alcohol, you cannot, I mean, you can't even go and watch a rated R movie. So you damn sure should not be able to determine your gender when
Well,
you're a kid.
and to be exposed to what I call them transgender conversion treatments because they're converting
Yes.
a child
That
into
is
a
exactly
transgender
right.
person. And
You
for
want to
some
know
reason,
what
that kind of
conversion
conversion,
therapy really is?
yep.
That's conversion therapy.
Yeah, and these kids, I mean, people don't realize it's happening to kids as young as 8 years old, probably younger. I know 8 years old is documented that these kids
Well,
are, I mean, and that's kids still believe in the tooth fairy at that age. I mean, that's
at the Genesis Clinic in Dallas, which is the pediatric gender clinic, and it's called the Genesis Clinic.
Genesis,
And
right. So they're
yes,
mocking the Christians
they're
and
mocking the Christians, and also they've done something with science, like they've included science, gene, CIS, like
Gene and cis and all kinds of cute
cisgender.
plays on
Yeah.
words.
And so they start taking kids as early as 5 years old to social trip. So there, you can go there at 5 years old, and you can, between 5 and up to 8 years old, you can social transition, which means just begin presenting, dressing as a female. And then when you get 8, they will start you on puberty blockers to block you from going through natural puberty. And then when you get 15, they will send you to get a sex change.
Well, and I know some clinics are starting to put kids on puberty blockers at 8 and cross-sex hormones at 8 as young. I mean,
Yeah.
that's so young. And these kids don't even, I mean, there's no way they can make these decisions. And this sterilizes them. So basically, we have a nation now that is endorsing with public funds the sterilization of children. And for some reason, people are okay with this, and I can't figure it out at all. So I'm thankful that that you're speaking out about it, but you've also had some repercussions from.
Yes. I so I've spoken out about it, and I've shared my testimony, and my testimony is out there, believe me. And it really has, I do this, and I do it because I care. I do it because I don't want these children to be abused. I mean, we have this is child abuse. I know what the trans life was like for me, and I don't want any kid to live that life. And so I I really am fighting to outlaw it in the whole country. But I've got I catch a lot of flack for it, and the LGBT activists hate me. They've doxed me. They have I'm a hairstylist. They have went on my hairstylist page and have left bad reviews, calling me a transphobe, homophobe, bigot, religious bigot, racist. I don't know how race comes in there, but
They
I'm a
do that with
racist now.
everybody that I can't even,
I'm a,
that's like, they do that with anybody that disagrees with them. They just go after them. And this is not tolerance. I mean,
and so what people think, well, and so what has happened is that, well, no new clients will come to me, because when they post all this stuff, they post it as if they've come to me, like they've been clients of mine. And Yelp reviews and stuff like that, you can't get them taken down. And so then I've lost a lot of my clients because they just don't want to be caught up in the drama, even though nobody knows who they really are. But they don't want to go to a controversial stop. They probably don't want to go to a controversial anything in their life, because people don't want drama, and I
right.
understand that. And so and so I literally, like, I went from having, being able to pay my bills to I cannot even pay my bills now. Like, my rent is due tomorrow, and I still don't even know how I'm going to do that. I don't have the money for my rent.
So do you have GoFundMe page?
I have a Give Send Go page, and then you can also donate through Cash App
So
or
maybe can you
Venmo.
share those links and I'll put them in the description below so that people can give you a hand. And because
Yeah.
I don't think people realize that how much of a repercussion we have for speaking out, that this is not something we are having huge dire costs in our lives for speaking out about these things. We're
And
being
I want people to know that, it's not just the LGBT activists. because we have to understand that LGBT activists, Antifa, and BLM all work together.
Yep.
So if one goes after you, they all go after you.
Right.
And I have received death threats from BLM. I have all the screenshots in my phone. I have received death threats from the gay community. Antifa, they're the ones who dox me like no other. I mean, it's just
And it's just
literally,
because
it's insane.
they don't appreciate your story. They're busy trying to stand up and say that one group gets to share their experience and their story, but another group doesn't. And it is infuriating because I've also had death threats and been it just we need to have room in our society for voices like yours and mine and others who have had different experiences, because legislators need to know when they pass these bills that they're hurting kids,
Yeah, they do.
and they need
And
to
we
know what's
have
going on
to,
in the medical clinics, that these children
oh,
are being
definitely.
abused, they're being sterilized and
Well,
mutilated.
every legislator I've talked to about this, they don't even know the Genesis Clinic exists. They're like, what? Yeah. And they're like,
Yeah,
and what's happening there? And they're like, oh my God, they cannot believe it.
so it's
And
really
just a lot
important
of
to have people
citizens.
speaking out, because otherwise we're having, I mean, it if people don't speak out, it's just going to continue. We're going to have, we have thousands of kids now who are being mutilated and sterilized, and if we don't speak out, we're going to have millions.
We have, in the state of Texas, we have 500 children going through social transitioning right now, this
Well,
at a
and
very
in
young age.
Utah, I believe that we have, the last year that was reported, we had 500 girls going through transgender conversion at the University of Utah. 500 in Utah.
I
Um,
know.
and they're getting these treatments that are going to damage them for life. And so I encourage people to support you, because we need your voice. We need people who have lived the lifestyle, who can come out and say, if we can help these kids not have this lifestyle, they're going to be healthier and happier.
And there's a lot of people like me. There's a lot of people with my story, but they don't share their story
Right, they're
because
afraid.
they're afraid.
Yeah.
And so, and I've been the sacrifice. I chose to be to pledge a sacrifice, and now I'm.
And Kevin, I hope that you're not going to go do something to get that money for your rent, that you're going to like,
Oh,
I'm
I'm not. I'm not. Now, like, let me tell you, anytime I'm broke, I'm like,
don't do it.
but I'm not going to. But
Okay.
literally, I mean, I told my mom yesterday, like, I'm probably gonna start. And this sounds really crazy, but I really kind of have always wanted to do this because I'm an adventurous person. So I'm gonna start living in my car, I think. But listen, it's not living in my car. What I want to do is to travel the countryside, speaking out and protesting at every gender clinic that exists in this country, and organizing protests at them, and also going to legislators and informing them and bringing awareness to them and let them know so that they can taking them bills to like, because I have a bill from a bill that would criminalize pediatric gender transition, taking them this bill and saying, hey, write a bill like this for your state. And so that's what I want to do. And I want to travel to each state doing this. So it's what I'm going to do is I'm going to sublease my apartment. I'm going to trade my car in for a van, and I am going to travel the countryside and hopefully live off of donations just by, people can donate to me and donate to me monthly for my work. But and I don't really my mom was really like, Kevin, you're not gonna go live in a van. I'm like, mother, listen, what I'm really gonna do is hopefully stay in like Airbnbs and host families and along the way. I'm not really gonna live in my car. I'm just a little too bougie for that. But I really do want to. I really, really, I think God has told me and confirmed to me that this is what I'm supposed to do.
And we need
So,
someone to do that. And I have been flirting with the idea as well. I have a child at home, and so I need to wait until he's launched. But if this is still going on once he's launched, I have I have every intention of getting a van and doing exactly what you're talking about. So maybe
Because we have to
we can do
look,
it
the
together.
children, I know this is going to sound so cliche, but the children are our future.
Yeah. Well, and
They are.
they're innocents. They're
Yes.
vulnerable, and somebody has to stand up for them.
But imagine the next generation and the next generation. If all these kids have been, there will be no more God. There will always be
Well,
God, but there
and
will be no more.
it's the sex positivity, as you and I both
Yeah.
know, it's not healthy and
Yeah. No.
not good for kids to be
Like, and
sexualized.
there is going, like, I mean, now they're making polyamorous relationships normal. They are normalizing pedophilia.
Right.
I
And
mean,
that's
what's
where
next?
they're trying to normalize, sex with kids. So they're trying to make it seem like kids are capable of giving consent. And to me, this is just so evil.
Like, did you see the bill SB 145 that came out in California? That is disgusting.
yeah, and it's just it just it's like everybody talked about the slippery slope, but we have like a cliff that we went off of, and things are just, people don't realize how insane they are and how much damages it's going to do to kids. So I'm really thankful that there are people like you who are standing up and speaking
And
out.
here's the deal, like that we have like SB 145 is out. And I remember whenever gay marriage got legalized and people were saying, I was kind of on the fence about it because I could see both sides. And I really have a lot of sympathy for the LGBT community.
Well, and
I have a
actually what
lot of
I thought
I
is
have a
I
lot of
thought that it would be a
compassion.
good thing. I thought gay marriage would be a good thing because it would promote monogamy. but
Me too.
but what has been happening is just it's just insanity. It's like it's almost like they had all their efforts into that, and then once that passed, they just spewed into all this other like absurd
And well, I used to hear
stuff.
pastors and stuff preach, and I was like, they're being hateful because they would preach and say, "Oh, well, if gay marriage passes, the next thing will be pedophilia and all this stuff." And I was like, that is never gonna happen. Like, these people just want to love each other like everybody else.
Right.
But those
That's what
preachers
we're
are right
looking at. And that's what
because
I hate, is because like
it
you, I used to
pedophilia
be
is being
yeah.
normalized,
Yep.
and
And
then the LGBT community, they have adopted the P for
yeah.
pedophilia.
Yeah, it's
Disgusting.
incredibly concerning, and people don't have a clue. And it bothers me that, we're the ones that are considered hateful because we want to protect our kids from this.
And look, I have friends that are trans, that are gay, that are everything. And they know my story. And they still love me, they still support me. Now, not all of them, it's very few, but I do still have some.
Well, and I think,
And
Kevin, the difference is that when you speak, and this is something that is very different from you, that some Christians I think need to learn from you, is that you know that God loves them. God loves everybody. Whereas there are some
yes,
Christians who are like, God doesn't love you, God hates you. And
no, that's a lie.
that's where I think Christians are really losing support, because they're suggesting that, first of all, they're in the position of judging when we know that God is the one who judges. And they're also spreading a lot of hatred. And hatred is not what wins people's hearts.
No. The Bible specifically says it's love. Love leads to repentance.
Right. Yeah. And that was my experience too. I mean, I was just like you were. I never thought that God could love me. I thought, and that's where I think Christians who really have felt God's love, who have been in the depths of decay and then felt that they're the ones who really understand that if you go around telling people God hates them, you are losing the battle. You're
Oh yeah.
It's friendly fire. You're just shooting yourself in the foot.
Well, it's like the street preachers that go out like turn or burn and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, I have lived this lifestyle, and you're doing nothing but making people hate Christians even more.
Right, right.
So I go out to LGBT parades. They didn't have them this year because of COVID, but last year I go out and I take water. I take like an ice chest with water and a wagon with snacks, and I'm like, hey, because it's hot in Texas. I'm like, you want water? And they're like, oh yeah, how much is it? And I'm like, it's free. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, why are you doing this? And I'm like, because God loves you. And these people will start crying. They will start like telling me their life story,
Oh,
and they always will talk about how they've been abused or whatever. And like one girl, she started crying, gave me a hug. She was hugging me for like 5 minutes and crying. And
oh,
she said that her mom was Pentecostal and just kicked her out of the house that day for being gay. And I was like,
oh,
well, that's not very loving at all. And
mm-mm.
so, but these people, they really appreciate it when Christian people can come and show them love, because they don't think that Christians love them at all.
Right.
And so
So you
that
have
is why
such an
I do it.
important message on a lot of levels. You have a lot of lessons to share with people, and I'm really thankful that you're speaking out. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we end?
No, that's all. I think we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah. And I hope you come to Utah. And I would love to to
Oh, I definitely, that is on my list because I've
yes.
heard it's beautiful up there.
It is beautiful. It's very different from Texas. It's dry. It's hot in the summer and it's cold in the winter. You might want to wait until spring to come up here. We
Yeah.
get the snow, we get the cold, but we are introducing legislation in Utah, and I know that there's legislation in lots of different places, Alabama, I believe South Dakota. So there's a
Well,
chance
our
we might.
session starts in January here, and so
Okay.
we're gonna introduce it here too. But yeah,
Yeah, and I'm hoping that we have some good news. Maybe we'll try to do this again in a year and be celebrating for our kids.
yeah, for sure,
Made some
for
changes.
sure.
All right, thanks so much, Kevin.